Alright, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to another video here on the channel, and today we're going to be doing a little bit of an update video on the whole Amaranth situation that happened a few days ago. I initially made a video talking about all this, kind of giving Amaranth the props, because as of that news story breaking, we were all kind of under the assumption, right, that Amaranth had like clutched a 3v1 home invasion. She like led these guys to this garage or whatever, ended up shooting at least one of them, basically defending herself and her property from this like crazy home invasion. But almost immediately after that video was posted, there was some doubts that started going around, because people like Donut Operator, who they aren't necessarily like the police themselves or whatever, right? They're not a first-hand source, but they have friends and like mutual friends with Amaranth and people in the police department. People like Donut Operator came out and they were making the claim that Amaranth actually didn't shoot any of these burglars at all. It was actually her husband, who up until this point I don't think we'd ever seen before. Now, we definitely heard about the guy. As you may remember, a few years ago, Amaranth had this big moment on stream where she was like crying and talking about how she was gonna get a divorce and whatnot because her husband was controlling, he was abusive, he was basically pimping her out on OnlyFans and on these like hot tub streams, just basically using her for money. She didn't want to do any of this, she was being forced to. And so there's been this kind of like I guess note in the whole Amaranth lore that this guy is just some sort of like fucking monster or whatever, right? This guy is this abusive husband. But as we're about to learn today, I really don't know if that's the case here. Now, obviously, since she told everything about her husband at that point, and now she has done many things that have already made people question the validity of what she says because of that, right? Now, everyone basically assumes that was like a massive money scheme or whatever. She was lying for attention. And so some people already had their doubts about this whole shooting situation, but Amaranth did an interview with Aiden Ross, of all people. Kind of surprising that that's like the person who got picked for something like this, right? I'm not gonna lie. I didn't really see that coming. I don't know how often Aiden Ross is out here interviewing people in situations like this, but I figured that this would have been done with somebody who was like, I don't know, closer to her niche, if that makes sense. Like somebody who may already have like backstory, like Donut Operator, for example. I thought if anyone was gonna do something like this, it'd be like that. But she did an interview where not only does she finally show her husband, but we get a little clarity on what actually transpired. So I'm gonna go ahead and roll the clip. I do want to say, if you're brand new around here on the channel, make sure you hit like and subscribe down below so you don't miss any future uploads. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into the video.
Hey.
Can you see now?
Hey.
Hello.
What's up, Amaranth's husband? Nice to meet you.
Hi, how's it going?
You're a real warrior. You're a good husband, man. You know, you were brave that night. Good shit.
You know, everyone says that, but really, I credit her with saving both of our lives because, like, look, put myself in her shoes. I don't know if I'd be clear thinking enough to stay calm and to, you know, formulate a plan and to basically lead them to where, you know, someone might have a firearm or who can help, right? Because, like, you know, a lot of people make a big thing about how, oh, well, you know, she doesn't have scars or whatever. It's like, you know, they were pistol whipping her, and so she called me when it happened, and we can go into the story in a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I was actually on the phone with her when they shot the door twice and then kicked it in, right?
All right.
I heard all of that, and then I heard, you know, them walking up and then yelling their demands. And for a lot of that, I'm just hearing it on speakerphone, and I'm like, the structure over, right? And so that gave me just...
All right, so the husband does clarify that, like, I guess he gives her credit, which, I mean, I'm not trying to diminish what she did, because, like, he says in this whole thing, right, it is pretty hard to be getting pistol whipped or whatever, and, like, you know, you're hearing them shoot your door, and then you, like, stay in the game, you know what I mean? Mentally, you're not, like, fucking just terrified, like, flight or fright kind of situation where you're just like fucking coward in fear. But at the end of the day, what she said happened wasn't actually what happened, and this is like the story that she told people. So I mean, at this point, right, we got to clarify the actual details here. So as we all know now, this husband, the guy that we just saw, which we'll get into the whole husband abuse thing here in a little bit, right, but this is the guy who actually shot the gun and hit the robber, basically stopped this entire thing dead in its tracks, right? Now Amaranth will go on to claim that like she leaned against the wall, he was like shooting the gun right past her face, like some sort of action movie sequence or whatever, just fucking shooting these robbers as they come through the door. But as we all know from the first video and when this whole thing all went down, Amaranth claimed that she was the one who shot the gun, right? And so now there's this situation that has unfolded from all of this, and it's kind of similar in a way to the whole like previous husband story, right? Which obviously we just, I think, saw him for the first time. This is the first time I've ever seen him, at least. But Amaranth seems to have this like situation in these kinds of things where she kind of, it seems like, inflates the story just a little bit, like over dramatizes it a tad bit. Now, not to say like this whole thing was fake. A lot of people think that. A lot of people think this shit was just outright fake, but there is like an actual police report apparently now, and on top of that, one of the robbers has been arrested by the Houston police for this entire thing. So I don't think it's fake at this point, but just simply because Amaranth has this tendency to like fudge the details in these stories just a little bit, right? There's a ton of people who just now think this is like some massive conspiracy, kind of like the whole initial husband story right now. If you weren't around for that whole thing, like I said a little bit at the beginning of the video here, Amaranth a couple years ago like had this big thing where she was talking about how her husband was like abusing her and controlling her. He was manipulating her into doing OnlyFans. He was basically pimping her out on the internet. He was like in control of all of her finances. He was like emotionally abusing her. All of this like insane shit, right? And clearly when all of this transpired, pretty much everybody online, like 90% of people took her side, because as everybody could see from then, it was just like this emotional woman talking about how horrible her life is with her husband. And the sad thing about it is there are a lot of situations out there like where husbands are abusing their wives. They are doing some crazy shit and like just being horrible people. But in this instance, it seems like that whole story in that whole situation was completely fabricated. Now, not only because as we can see by the husband in this video here, he doesn't necessarily seem like a bad guy. Granted, we've only seen him for a few seconds or whatever, but from what I can gather, he doesn't seem like the kind of guy who is running some e-pimping industry or something out of his wife, but also he's willing to literally put his life in danger and take the opportunity to possibly kill 3 people to protect him and his wife in this home invasion. So a lot of the whole story that Amaranth has painted just has now come into question for a lot of people, because she initially tweeted out that she was the one who shot them, all this other shit, all this other ooplob and everything, right? And the thing is, I don't think we ever would have gotten any clarification on this story had people like Donut Operator not come out against the whole story and basically in a way leaked that the husband shot the gun in the first place. Amaranth was on Twitter claiming she was the one who did it, right? Which I don't understand how that accidentally happened, so I don't want to say that that was an accident, because, I mean, if you're clear-minded enough during this whole situation to type out like, I'm in a robbery, this is serious, all this other shit on Twitter, I would think you're clear-minded enough to know like, hey, my husband shot the burglars or whatever. Now you may be like, oh, but Optimus, this isn't really a big deal, right? Like, oh, so what, she fudged the story. Well, it really wouldn't be a big deal if this was the first time that it happened, and it probably also wouldn't be a big deal if it didn't immediately and directly contradict all of the previous statements she's been making for fucking years now. But the unfortunate reality is it kind of does both. And now that this like clip of this interview has surfaced online and people are seeing it for the first time, 80% of the reactions on like Twitter and shit are people like, but wait, I thought this husband was this abusive piece of shit, right? Like, I thought he was holding you there against your will and making you do all this terrible shit. But now, you know, he's a fucking hero. He literally saved both of their lives, saved their house, stormed off these burglars with a fucking shotgun or a pistol or whatever, right? And so people are pretty pissed off because from everybody's perspective, she just continues to like make up shit and like just lie. Now, the thing is, like 80% of this story from all of the like basically the other evidence, you know what I mean, all the other context that we know, it appears that this was actually real. Like she did get burglarized, like the house did get robbed or whatever. But when you're like live tweeting this and you're fucking up critical details and you're opening up holes in the story, you just get it to a point where people just start like not believing you or just taking you as a fucking liar, right? Now, also, just to clarify, we don't know 100% that this is the same guy that apparently was pimping her out back back in the day, but just given the fact that it is her husband and the person she described in the past as doing all this or whatever was her husband, it just kind of seems like this has to be the guy, right? I mean, unless she's getting married like every other fucking year or something like that, I really don't see this not being the same guy who is being described as like this fucking dictator or whatever that was just fucking completely ruining her life. I don't know. That's the problem with all of this shit, right? Is I want to give Amaranth the benefit of the doubt in a situation like this, and I think I did in my video, right? Because the initial story was that she did all this or whatever, right? There was no mention of the husband or anything, but I do think it's a pretty important distinction to make, right? Like, yeah, I wasn't the one who shot the gun. It was this other person, because also, I mean, you got to think about it too. This is now also a legal process, right? Like, there's actually a person arrested for this. This is an actual documented crime, according to the Houston police and like everybody else, right? So when you're on here making statements like, oh, I was the one who shot, I'm not a complete lawyer or anything, but I would imagine that could also fuck up the story legally, right? Because the court's gonna want to know who shot, they shot what, when did they shoot, who did they shoot, all this shit, right? All of these details are pretty important to a case like this, where people's lives were at risk. This is a violent crime. So I do think it's important to be telling the truth, like, and the whole truth. And if you don't know, like, what you're saying and whatnot, you probably shouldn't be tweeting. You probably shouldn't be posting it on the internet, right? That's the thing, though. It's like, once you post this shit online, you've pretty much sealed your fate at that point. If you don't have the details correct, or like you're fucking up details, it's gonna make people not want to believe you. And she already had like one of these big lie story kind of situations before. So a lot of people just are at this point where it's like, wait, nothing she says makes any sense. The same guy who apparently fucking hates her is willing to kill for her, and first she shot, now he shot, you know what I mean? I just wanted to clarify this, because I mean, if I'm gonna be on here telling people like, oh, this is what happened or whatever in these videos, and I'm reading what you say out loud, and then 5 days later you're changing your fucking story around, right? I don't know, that puts everybody else in a pretty awkward position who's trying to like tell the story or stick up for you or whatever, right? So I just wanted to go ahead and clarify all of this, because I mean, it is a tad bit different story, right? There's a whole lot of difference between, oh, the hot tub e-girl streamer or whatever I know is out here shooting fucking robbers at her house like this is a GTA mission. That's a whole lot of a different story than my ex-abusive husband who fucking controls my life and hates me was willing to kill 3 people in self-defense for me and him, right? Like, those are 2 completely different tales. So anyway, like I said, I wanted to clear that up. Thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're brand new around here on the channel, follow me over on Twitter and Twitch at @SubToOptimus. Make sure to check out Shoptimus down below. Thank you to my Watch Optimus subscribers. Your support helps the channel tremendously. And until my next video, guys, this is Optimus, well, clarifying the whole story on Amaranth and signing out.